Thank you for your time today and for joining us to learn how to install Fibo. By the end of this session, you should understand the Fibo system and all its parts, have a good basic knowledge of proper installation procedure, have the ability to explain the Fibo system to customers and colleagues, and be able to pass the certification exam. My name is Tommy Ellis, and I've been with Fibo going on 4 years. My experience is in building materials, sales and installation, and I was also a general contractor in California for 15 years with a focus on kitchen and bath remodels with experience in all the associated trades. Fibo has been manufacturing panels since the early 1950s and started in the wet room space in the mid-1980s, so we have a long history of success in this space with a tried and tested product and system. Fibo is manufactured in Norway in a state-of-the-art roboticized factory, the manufacturing process which allows us to produce panels quickly with extreme precision. Fibo's won many awards, is a certified antibacterial surface, and a very sustainable, environmentally friendly product. Fibo panels are a 3-part construction consisting of an HPL decorative laminate face, 7-ply premium-grade birch plywood, and a thin laminate vapor barrier backing. Our panels join with a patented Aqualock click joint, and it comes with a lifetime residential and 25-year commercial warranty. Fibo panels are available in over 600 different colors and design combinations. Fibo is a 100% waterproof system when installed correctly. We do not require any special waterproof backing to install our panels, and Fibo can be installed in new construction, remodels, and over existing surfaces, even tile. The Fibo system is a complete system. From the panels and profiles to the screws, sealant, and installation accessories, you'll have everything you need in one kit to install our panels. We do not manufacture bases, tubs, niches, and other accessories, as Fibo is designed to work with just about any other manufacturer's product on the market. If you have any questions about compatibility, please reach out to us. Our product is designed for wet areas, but can be used on any interior surface, such as a full bathroom wrap. Our panels come in a range of sizes. The standard most popular size is 24.5 inches wide by 94.5 inches tall. This is available in tile and non-tile designs. We make a tall panel in both 118 inches tall and 107 inches tall by 24.5 inches wide in limited designs. We have available a 12-inch wide by 94.5 inch tall accent panel available in 3 options, and these are available while stock lasts. Finally, we have our wide panels. These are 94.5 inches tall, and they're available in both a 41-inch and a 48-inch width. The wide panels are available in a non-tile design only at this time. We also offer a product we call kitchen board. This is the same panel that we use in showers, cut down to 18 inches tall by the standard 24.5 inches wide. These panels are designed to be installed as a single course backsplash in the kitchen. If you require taller coverage, our standard panels can be cut to size and shape and used throughout the kitchen as a backsplash. The installation of kitchen board is much simpler, and a typical galley or L-shaped kitchen can be installed in as little as an hour and a half and can also be installed over existing surfaces. The kitchen board itself comes in specific colors and designs, so if there is a color that is desired that we do not offer in this size, you can use a standard Fibo panel and cut it to the size and shape that you need to fit your application. There is one limitation for installing kitchen board, and that is behind a gas cooktop that has no flame or heat deflection. Please contact us through our web contact form for additional details on this. These are some of the certifications that we've obtained. For all of our certifications and other technical data, this can be found on our website, FiboSystemUSA.com, under the product menu, and then click Technical Documentation. Fibo can be used on any interior wall that requires a wall covering. While our product is primarily designed for the wet room, it can be used in many different applications. We're being used today in new construction, remodeling, multifamily, commercial applications, modular, and many more as you see here. Fibo is not an exterior rated product, and it is also not a material that you can use on the floor. This is a list of materials and tools you'll need for a proper installation. This can also be found in our product installation guide, and we will also cover this in our video demonstration. There are options for layout when installing Fibo panels, and we will discuss this on these next two slides. A standard 32 by 60 alcove will require 5.5 panels maximum yield by taking minimum cuts and using offcut pieces in other areas of the installation. This works well with a non-tile design using our 24-inch wide panels. It can be used with a tile design as well. However, as you can see in the illustration, there is no consistency of tile size or symmetry. This will, however, minimize waste. For a symmetrical tile design layout, which is more in line with how a traditional tile installation would look, it will require 7 24.5-inch wide panels in an alcove of the same size. Typically, you would align the vertical grout line to fall in the center of the drain or plumbing fixtures, and on your back wall you would center a full panel and have even cuts on both sides. If you are doing a full room wrap where you will install panels outside the wet area, a non-standard size installation or similar, we do have a calculator on our website under the product menu and select purchase calculator. You can also ask your distributor for assistance or send an email to info@fibosystemsusa.com, and we would be happy to help you determine exactly what you need to complete your job. Fibo panels do not require any special waterproofing measures be taken in advance in order to properly install a waterproof surround. Fibo was independently tested and is actually certified as a waterproof membrane itself. Your local building codes may require something different, which is okay, as Fibo can be installed over many substrates. The exception to this waterproofing rule would be for a tub or base that does not have a flange, and that requires a waterproof membrane 6 inches up from the top of the surface of your tub or your base. Now let's move on to the installation demonstration video. This is about 30 minutes long, and it will cover all of the steps involved in a typical Fibo installation.
So what you need to get started is your Fibo panels come in a package of 2. You're going to start with the base profile, hidden corner profile. We've got 2 different sizes of L-shaped finishing profile. We've got the large and the small. These come in white, black, and aluminum. If you're going to be wrapping the room and you need to go around a 90-degree corner, we've got an outside corner profile. You're going to need your Fibo seal, click wax, the Fibo screws, the cleaning products, the wipes and the Fibo Clean, our Fibo sealing tools, and then we have our optional Fibo grip. To complete your Fibo installation, you're going to need the following tools. We're going to start with your saw, either a track saw or a circular saw with a 60-tooth finish blade. If you're not going to use a track saw, make sure you've got 8-foot and 4-foot clampable straight edges. You're going to need a 2-foot and a 4-foot level, pry bar, you need a utility knife, a jigsaw and or a multi-tool, hole saw bits for cutting your pipe penetrations, measuring tools, marking tools, blue tape, 2 options of shims. We've got these plastic horseshoe type, and then we've got our standard wood type shims as well. Heavy duty caulking gun, rubber mallet, a drill with a T10 bit, and a bit for your deck screws or whatever wood screws you want to use if you're attaching OSB strips. A chop saw or a hacksaw in order to cut your profiles, and then finally any PPE, ear protection, gloves, eye protection, etc.
Fibo panels are to be stored flat and unopened until you're ready to install them. Acclimation period can vary. If there's an extreme variance in temperature from where the product is stored versus where the product is to be installed, then acclimation time can be as much as 72 hours. If the storage condition and site conditions are similar, this can be less. Refer to the product installation guide or contact us with any questions you may have regarding this. And always be sure to inspect each panel before installing. As it pertains to Fibo Seal, appropriate storage temperature is between 41 degrees and 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and application temperature is between 41 degrees and 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Our product data sheet has additional information.
Fibo can be installed over multiple backwall options. Today, we're going to talk about the 2 most common, and that's going to be gluing up over drywall and screwing in over OSB strips horizontally placed across the studs. We can also go over existing surfaces such as tile, other wall surface products as well, in a glue-up option as well. That's a separate training, and we'll address that in future broadcasts. When you set your drywall or your OSB strips, we want to be 1/4 of an inch above the flange of your tub or your shower pan. The Fibo sealing tool is 1/4 of an inch thick, so that makes a great spacer to set your material on top of and get that 1/4 of an inch gap. First thing you want to do before you get started doing anything is you want to check your base for level and you want to check your walls for plumb. So we want to be as level as we possibly can. This one actually is set really nice, and this one doesn't have any particular strange casting in the material as well. You may run into a situation where there might be a hump or a little bit of a valley. If that's the case, you're going to want to find your highest spot and level from there. So I'll check my 3 sides, and everything's good here. So my base is set.
So if you find any unusual outages in your walls, particularly when it's drywall, a lot of the corrections probably need to be done behind the drywall. But when we're gluing it up, if it's a minor variance, we can address that with glue. With the OSB strips, it's a lot easier to get your walls plumb and flat by taking some shims, putting those in place in your corners, as well as in the field, making sure that everything's nice and flat. Always want to make sure you get 2 screws in each of your OSB strips. Here we framed out for a niche. We're going to introduce a niche into this installation training as well. So I've got my bottom support, I've got my top support, and it's going to fit right in between the studs, and we'll address that later on in this demonstration.
Now we want to measure and cut our base profiles. I've got a couple of different options of how the Fibo is going to end. On this wall, I'm actually going to run it long and put a dog leg. On that end, we're going to stop right at the end of the shower base. But the base profile is still going to go in this installation. It's going to end at the same place in both locations. So I'm basically just going to take my measurements to the end of the shower base, and I'll take those over the saw, and I'll cut my profiles on 45-degree angles in the corner. Now that we have our measurements, we'll go ahead and cut our base profile. And there's my 45. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and dry fit the base profiles that we just cut. Just set them in place to get started. And we want our base profile to be 1/8 of an inch minimum off the deck of whatever surface we're working on top of. We're going to use these horseshoe shims that are 1/8 of an inch thick, and I'm going to put these under the base profile all the way around. Once those are in place, then we'll go ahead and we'll do another check of level all the way around and make any adjustments to the level with 1/16 of an inch shims if necessary to make it perfectly flat. After the profile's been dry fit and you're comfortable with the way everything sits, as we get ready to install it, we're going to apply a bead of Fibo seal to the back of this base profile, right below the screw lines that's pre-drilled into the profile itself. What this is going to do, in the event of any potential wicking that could happen down the road, this is going to help prevent water from getting into the base material behind the Fibo panels. So after we've applied our Fibo seal to the back of the profile, we'll go ahead and set it back down in place on top of the shims that we left from when we leveled out the base profile the first time, and just stick it to the wall. We're only going to put 1 screw in the bottom of the base profile to start, and that's going to be on the wall that we're starting on, and that's to hold the base profile in place. Some of the instructions say to put all the screws in all at once. You'll find out as we go through the course of the installation, we're going to add additional screws through the bottom of the base profile through the panels. So installing all of the screws all at once is not necessary, and if for some reason you need a little bit of flexibility as you're going through the installation, leaving the ends of the profile loose is helpful to make any adjustments that you might need to make. You definitely want to put your bead of Fibo seal along the back of each piece, set it back up against the wall and leave it rest on the shims, and then you can make the adjustments, like I said, as you go through the course of the installation. Okay, so the hidden inside corner profile is going to go up next, and to measure that, we're going to go from the top of our installation. We're going to measure all the way down to the top of the base profile where it sets flat on the wall. You want to take that number and subtract 1/4 of an inch. Reason for that is we want to leave 1/8 of an inch gap at the bottom, and we want to leave 1/8 of an inch gap at the top. What that's going to do is if there's any flex in your shower pan or your tub, when it moves up and down, when you put weight on it, the metal won't bind once the product's installed. After we've cut our hidden corner profiles, we're going to talk about orientation of the installation. Today, I'm going to do a left to right installation, and the way the profiles get installed is dependent on which direction you're going to go. As you can see that I've got the tape on one side and I've got the channel on the other. Okay, I always want the tape to be on the side of the corner in the direction that I'm going. In this case, I'm going left to right. So if I put my panel up here, or my profile rather, here in the corner, the tape is to the left of the corner. It's going to be the same thing on the opposite side, where my tape is left of the corner. Okay. If we want to go right to left, we're simply going to flip these things around upside down and put them in backwards. So if I were starting on this wall, going right to left, now my tape is on the right. And that's what your profiles would look like in the corner. There is a third option, and it's a back wall first option, and in that instance, we're going to want our 2 pieces of tape facing inward towards each other. So for a back wall installation, that's basically what it's going to look like. Now, you need to keep in mind, if you're starting with a back wall first installation, it does require you to flip a panel over 180 degrees in order to get the click joint to line up properly. That is not possible with every single panel that we make, in particular the subway, the hex, and the chevron patterns. You cannot reverse direction. So if you're using one of those designs, you want to make sure that you go in one continuous direction, whether it's left to right or right to left, continuous direction in the alcove as well as around the entire rim. To install the hidden corner profile, as I mentioned before, we took a 1/4 inch deduction off of the overall length of this so that we can leave a gap at the bottom, also leave a gap at the top of the installation. So when I'm going to set this in place and make sure that I've got a nice 1/8 of an inch gap there between the top of the base profile where it sits on the wall and the bottom of my hidden corner profile. This is simply going to install with screws into the corner, through the channel, and then we'll finish that off. We'll add 2 more screws all the way up to the top. 3 to 4 screws into the hidden corner profile is typically enough to hold it in place. So now we want to design our layout of the panels themselves. I'm starting going left to right, but my controls are on the opposite wall. So I need to find out where the center of my drain is, because I'm using a tile design. I want my tiles to line up symmetrically. I need to know where this center is so that I can decide what my first panel size is going to be over here. So I'm going to come on over here and figure out what my center of drain is, and that looks to be about 15.5. So then I'll take that and I'll come over here to this wall and I'll make my mark on 15.5. That's where the 2 panels are going to lock together. So then to determine the size of my first panel, I'm going to go to the end of my installation, which I've decided is going to come out 3 inches from here. Put a mark on the wall, and then I want to take and make a plumb line all the way up the wall to represent where the end of this panel is going to land. And then I can measure from my mark to my line, and that'll give me the size of the first panel that I'm going to cut. Talk about the orientation of the board real quick. We're doing a left to right installation. Each panel, when it comes out of the package, we're going to have a short side or a tongue side, and we're going to have a long side or a groove side. The groove side or the nailing side is the side we always want to be on the wall in the direction that we're installing. So since we're going from left to right, I always want to make sure that my nailing lip, my groove side, is on my right-hand side. That would make this the bottom, that would make that the top. Whenever you're measuring a panel to cut, you always want to measure from the laminate edge and not from the actual end of the panel, including the aqualock. So we'll start from the laminate edge on the tongue side, or the groove side rather, and make our mark accordingly on the opposite end. Now that our first panel is cut, we're going to go ahead and set it in place and dry fit it. Fibo grip works really well on these wide format tile panels. Set the panel on top of the base profile, line it up with my line, and then double check the panel for plumb. Once I have my panel set plumb, since we're gluing this up over drywall, we're going to go ahead and draw a straight line all the way down the end of the panel. We'll take the panel off, we'll seal that, and then we'll apply the glue using this line that we drew here to give us a stop guide. Now we're ready to permanently install the panel. For the first panel only, we're going to seal the bottom of the panel with Fibo Seal. You don't need to use a lot, but we want to make sure that the grain gets completely covered. So you apply a thin bead to the bottom, and then you can take your Fibo sealing tool to smash it out. I prefer to use my finger, whichever way works best for you. You want to just make sure that that grain is completely covered. If you get any excess Fibo seal on the surface of the panel, you can just take your Fibo clean, spray the bottom, scrape it away with the sealing tool, and if necessary, you can finish it off and clean any other residue with a Fibo wipe. I do want to stress that it is important to clean up any excess sealant as you go, as opposed to waiting until the end of the installation, because it will get messy as you start working your way around. So it's always best to clean up every panel as you go.
For applying glue to the wall, I have cut a 1/4 inch tip on the nozzle of my Fibo Seal tube and will apply Fibo Seal as my glue in an S pattern, top to bottom, with 12 inches in between the horizontal beads. With this type of application, you should use about half a tube of sealant or glue per 24-inch wide standard height panel. Larger size panels will require more glue. Fibo Seal is a very strong construction adhesive. However, if you have a preferred construction adhesive, you may use it, but you may only use it as an adhesive. If you're unsure about compatibility, please contact us and we can help you with that.
Okay. One thing you want to make sure you make note of when you're doing a glue up over drywall is that you make note of where your stud location is. If this had a ceiling on top of it, I might put a mark on the ceiling so I know where the top of the panel is, because I want to put a screw in the face of the panel across where a stud's going to land to hold the panel in place while the glue dries. In this case, I've got a top plate all the way across, so I know I'm going to hit wood no matter where I put a screw. So for this particular panel, I don't need to make any marks. But for your installation, you may need to do that, so it's always good to know what your stud location is and mark it either, if you're coming down below the ceiling, mark it on the wall. If you're going all the way to the ceiling, make sure you mark it on the ceiling. Make sure the panel's plumb and push it into the glue. Next, we want to put face screws in the ends of the Fibo panel. We're also going to run one through the bottom through the base profile to hold the panel in place while the glue dries. It's also going to give us some external leverage when we go to click in the next panel. One thing you want to make certain of when you're coming into the field of the Fibo panel with a screw is that you don't come in any further than 1/4 inch. It'll get covered with an L-shaped profile. The small L profile is a 1/2 inch long and it'll cover that screw head. Double check and make sure my panel didn't wiggle. Remember when we installed the base profile, we put one screw in the end of it. I'm going to put a second screw through the base profile now into the nailing lip, through the base profile into the wall. When you're putting screws into the panels through the Fibo Aqualock joint, there's only one place the screw goes. And as you can see, we've got a milled line right here in the Aqualock joint. That is your screw line. As you can see by the empty hole that I've got here, I've got another one down at the bottom. Do not put the screws in the flat part. If you do that, the panels will not click together. So you always want to make sure that you go through this milled line on the nailing side. Screws will self-tap themselves and the heads will sink themselves, so you don't need to overdrive them. The panels will close just fine, flush right up against the tongue here. Okay, so we've got our screws on the end, we've got our screw in the bottom through the base profile, and I'm just going to go ahead and put one screw in the top. Again, I don't need to worry about where my studs are because I've got a top plate up here. I'll pre-drill my hole. Drive the screw. Now this panel's set. It's not going to move while the glue's drying, and I can go ahead and move on to the next panel. Now that our first panel is in place, we're ready to measure and cut our second piece going into the corner. Where we measure from is from the pin, what we call it on the hidden profile, is this little piece of metal that's sticking out. That's where the end of the Fibo panel is going to land. So you want to measure from the pin to the laminate edge of your panel to determine what your panel size is going to be. Show it the other way. You can measure from here to there as well, either way. You want to measure the bottom, the middle, and the top to come up with your finished panel size going into the corner. Sometimes I'll give myself about a 1/16 of an inch relief going into the corner just to ensure that everything fits. So for measuring the second panel, you want to measure again from the laminate edge. In this case, this is the side that is going into the panel that's already on the wall, so we want to measure from this side to our end cut, wherever that ends up being. So in the things you need to install, Fibo Click Wax is one of them. And what we do with that is we flip the board over, and on the back of the tongue side, we're going to go ahead and apply this wax. You can use the Fibo Click Wax, you can use a candle, you can use any hard wax basically. But what we want to do is we kind of just lubricate the back of the click joint, and it makes the panels go together a little bit easier. You don't need a lot, just enough to get a little nice thin layer on the panel itself. Now we're ready to dry fit our next panel. You want to introduce the panel at about a 45-degree angle, getting into the click joint. Line up your grout lines, and then just a little bit of wiggle, and the panel locks in place. Now that we know that it's dry fit, everything fits perfect along the corner, top and bottom, we're all good. I'm going to take the panel out, apply the sealant to the bottom, to the corner, and we're also going to apply Fibo Seal into the click joint. Now that the panel's dry fit, we're going to go ahead and we're going to seal the end that goes into the corner. We're going to seal the bottom. And we've already gotten this one started, so we're going to finish here along the back side. We're going to finish along the bottom as well, and we're going to clean those up real nice, make sure the grain's good and covered. Before we seal the click joint, if I'm working by myself, I want to put my glue on the wall first before I do anything else. If I put the sealant on the click joint and then go to put my glue on the wall, I gotta take a phone call, it's been 10 or 15 minutes, this could start to skin over before I'm ready to put the panel in. So I always want the sealant in the click joint to be the freshest sealant I've applied anywhere. So now I'll go ahead and put the glue on the wall. Once that's done, we'll go through how to seal the click joint properly. Now that we've got our glue in the wall, we can go ahead and peel the protective film off the double-sided tape on the hidden corner profile rather. This tape is going to hold the panel in place while the glue dries behind the panel. All right, now we're ready to seal the click joint for our second panel. There's one place and one place only that the sealant goes, and that is in the tongue side or the short side, right next to the laminate. We're going to go ahead and fill this channel, or this gap rather, completely full of Fibo Seal. We don't want to be chintzy with the Fibo Seal this time. We want to be very generous because we want a nice full joint to waterproof the two panels when they click together. Now that we've got our Fibo Seal applied, into our Aqualock joint. We're not going to touch it. We're going to leave it the way it is, and we're going to bring it into the installation, and we're going to install it just as we dry fit. And you want to give it some lateral pressure into the joint. You want to start seeing Fibo seal start to ooze out the entire length of the panel. Line up your grout joint. Sometimes the Fibo seal will offer a little resistance when you're trying to click the panels together. So make sure that you're fully engaged into the joint. A little foot pressure on the bottom of the panel, and just wiggle the panel until it locks into place. Once it locks into place, push it into the tape all the way up the panel, and then we'll clean the Fibo seal and move on to the next panel. So now we'll remove the excess Fibo seal from the Fibo Aqualock joint. First thing we're going to do is spray with Fibo Clean. This stuff does evaporate pretty quick, so only spray as far as you're going to be able to drag your tool down. We'll take the Fibo sealing tool and basically just scrape away the Fibo seal. And we're going to do that all the way down the unit. And then we'll come back with a Fibo wipe and wipe away any excess Fibo seal. So the Fibo wipes can leave a little bit of haze, particularly on a matte finish. So the last thing you want to do when you're cleaning your joint is take a little bit of Fibo Clean, spray it on a paper towel, and then just buff that haze away. Again, you can wait until the end of the job and do it later, but it's a lot easier to do while it's fresh. So again, I'm going to reiterate, clean up everything as you go rather than waiting till the end. It's just going to make it a lot easier on you if you do it that way. Okay, so now we're ready to get started on the back wall, which we're also going to transition to OSB strips over studs. So this is going to be a screw-in portion of the installation. All of the steps that we follow, they're going to be the same regardless of whether you're gluing it up or screwing it in. But just make note that we are going to be using screws on our OSB strips as we install these. Since I'm doing a tile design and I'm doing a symmetrical pattern, making sure that my cuts are even on both sides, the first thing I need to do is find the middle of the wall. So I'll run my tape measure all the way across, find the middle of the wall and mark it. So I got the middle of my wall. I know that that's where the center of a full panel is going to be. I'll go ahead and take and measure the center of that. If you're using metric, panel 60 centimeters across. If you're using imperial, it's 23 5/8 inches across for the laminate surface itself. So I'm going to figure out where the center of that is and make my marks accordingly. So that's where the end of my first panel is going to land. When I measure this panel, if you remember that the hidden corner profile has an F channel, it's got a little channel that goes into the back. And it's going to come in back behind the panel, just like that, by about 1/4 of an inch. So when you're measuring this panel, if you don't have a stick like the one I have and you're just using a tape measure to the face of the panel, remember to add 1/4 of an inch to the end of that dimension, and that'll give you your panel size. Okay, so we already measured and laid out for our panels. The first panel, I've already cut it, I dry fit it, I put my sealant on the long edge. I also put my sealant on the bottom of the panel as well, so that my panel is fully sealed. I checked my level for plumb in the corner, made sure everything was straight. And as you can see, I've got 2 screws in the nailing lip in each OSB strip all the way down. Before I started, I put my first screw into the corner of the base profile. And since we're only starting with 1 screw per run to get started, I'm going to go ahead and drive my last screw right through the nailing lip into the base profile. Now we're ready to put our next panel up. The middle panel is going to be a full panel, but as I mentioned, we're going to put a niche into the back wall here. So I need to measure for that. And I've made a couple of marks here to determine what my width is going to be. And then when I measure the height, we want to measure from the base profile on top of the fin that sticks up, not from the deck, because there is 1/8 of an inch difference. You want to measure from the bottom right to the top, in top, bottom and top locations. So now I'll take those marks, I'll transfer them to my panels and make the cuts. Since this is going to be falling in the middle of a click joint, I'm going to take my two panels, click them together, and cut out my opening all in one operation. Second panel is installed. We've already cut the two panels together for our niche layout, so we don't need to worry about that. We want to measure from the pin to the laminate, just like we did on this back wall over here. Don't measure it all the way to the wall, because remember, this panel on this side is going to slide behind the panel adjacent to it into the channel of the hidden corner profile. So we'll just take our measurement from here. Again, top, middle, and bottom. Transfer those marks to the panel, cut it, dry fit it, and install the panel. Okay, so I've already cut and dry fit the panel that's going to go here. Next step that I need to do is on the OSB strips, I want to run a bead of Fibo seal right next to the hidden profile, because we're not putting any glue or screws, excuse me, into the corner of this panel. We need something to hold the panel to the wall, not just relying on the strength of the tape. So what the tape will do is it's going to hold the panel in place while the glue dries. This glue is going to become our permanent adhesive to set the panel in place. So now I can go ahead and put my last screw into the base profile into the corner. So now in combination with the screw that I started with, the two screws in the bottom of each panel going so far, and this panel in the corner, I've got plenty of mechanical fastening of the base profile for the installation. Okay, so the panel's been sealed, everything's been put together. I used my Fibo Clean and my scrapers to get the residue out of the click joint. I did it for the other panel as well. Now I'm just removing that residual haze from the Fibo wipes. This panel's now set, and I'm ready to move on to the next wall. So what I did here, as you can see, I've got two panels clicked together, just like I did when I cut out for the niche. Did the same thing with my two plumbing pieces, or my two plumbing wall pieces rather. This piece here is the first one that's going to go into the corner. This next piece I'll cut after I've got my holes drilled. You just saw me measure and mark my plumbing locations in the grout line. That's because this grout line is going to land dead center of where the plumbing controls are. So I only need to make my marks vertically. I don't need to worry about which way they're coming over, because I already know it's going to be right there where my grout line is. So we'll go ahead and get these holes cut and dry fit and install this next panel. Any cut that we make into a Fibo panel, we need to seal with Fibo Seal, just like we did for the corner of the panel, just like we do on the bottom. Any other place where we cut the material, we want to make sure we apply Fibo Seal as well. And it's the same basic operation of applying the Fibo Seal to the cut surface and then making sure that that cut surface is completely covered with the Fibo Seal to waterproof the panel 100%. And again, you can use the Fibo sealing tool, you can use your finger, what have you. I prefer to use my finger, but be careful because the laminate edges are sharp, so be careful not to cut your fingers. And then we'll spray this down with some Fibo Clean, get rid of the excess Fibo Seal. We'll do the same thing to the hole here. We're also going to do the same operation to the niche, but I'm going to actually seal that cut opening as we're putting the niche in. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, so my next panel, it goes into the channel behind this panel into the hidden corner profile, making sure that my grout lines are lined up in the corner. And then I'm also going to double check again and make sure that this panel is plumb, which it is. So I'll go ahead and put my two screws into each strip. Again, making sure I get my last screw into the bottom of the base profile. So our last panel's in place, and we'll give it our final clean again to remove that haze and whatnot. And we're going to run our face screws on the end of this panel the same way we did the panel on the other side. And we'll just go ahead and pre-drill those holes. Remember, when you're going into the face of the Fibo, you don't want to come any further in than 1/4 inch.
In case I neglected to mention with the first panel, and as a review, when adding face screws to the end panel, 1 screw per OSB strip or 5 screws evenly spaced is sufficient. If you're going over drywall, it is best practice to place a stud at the location where the panels will end. This will give the screws something stronger to bite into.
Okay, so now we're ready to put in the niche. I've already got my opening. As I mentioned, we need to seal all the cut surfaces, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And it's the same operation that I've been doing for every other cut surface throughout the installation. And that's just apply a thin bead of Fibo seal to lock moisture out of the core material. You can use the Fibo sealing tool or your fingers, again, whatever works best for you. The goal is that the grain is completely covered all the way around. If you need to add more, add more. If you have too much, that's okay. Just make sure you clean away any excess residue.
We will also use Fibo Seal as our glue around the opening on all sides to attach the niche to the panels and to secure it in place.
And we'll just take the niche and we'll press it into the Fibo Seal. With the excess Fibo clean around the outside, we're just going to do the same thing we've done with everything else. You're going to spray it down with Fibo clean. You can take the Fibo sealing tool and use it as a scraper and just remove that excess residue. And this will permanently glue your niche into the opening.
You may also find it helpful to use blue tape to hold the niche in place while the Fibo Seal is drying.
Okay, so what I want to talk about now is running your panels either flush with the end of the base, or if we're going to run it beyond the length of the base, we're usually going to need to cover the bottom of the wall. We can do that with Fibo in a couple of different ways. The easiest way, without having to cut the bottom of the panels, is to just basically take a small piece of material and glue it in place. What you can see here is that I cut the panel right along the horizontal grout line, so that when I put my 2 pieces in place, just like that, and glue it in, it looks like a natural extension of the panel. We'll apply Fibo Seal on the end and on the bottom, just like we do with everything else, and then we'll just put a big application of glue on the bottom, and we'll glue this panel in place, and we'll put a couple of shims underneath of it to hold it in place while the glue dries. The other option for a dogleg is to actually cut the dogleg into your panel. And as you can see, what we've done here is we've got the dogleg down on the bottom, and then we had to cut the bottom of the panel. And if you do that this way, you're going to have to cut the bottom of the panel all the way around the installation. So you're going to lose whatever the height of your curb is all the way around the installation. So if you want to be able to use the full length of the panel, doing the gluing way that I showed you before is the best way to do that. But this basically is just going to fit just like so on top of the base profile when you set your first panel in place.
The L profile is going to be used as our finished trim to cover the ends of the panels along the ends and the top. Simply measure and cut to size, and then using Fibo Seal inside the corner of the profile, stick the profiles to the wall and make sure it is adhered to the panels all the way from top to bottom. You want to make sure that you run a continuous bead of Fibo Seal all the way along the length of your profile to make sure it sticks well. You can use Fibo Clean and the sealing tool to remove any sealant that may squeeze out beyond the profile.
So the last thing we have to do after our trim's up and everything else is done is we're going to seal the bottom and we're going to seal the corners. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your surface is nice and clean. Take a Fibo wipe, clean the surface real good. And then we're going to seal this panel, or this profile rather, in 2 places. One where the panel rests on the base profile, and then there's also room for sealant on the bottom, and we're going to do that in 2 operations. Then you take your Fibo Clean. Anytime you're going to touch your Fibo Seal with your fingers, with a tool, what have you, always make sure you spray it first. Sealing tool that we're going to use is going to be this square one with a 90-degree edge on it when we scrape the bottom of the panels. So we'll go ahead and Spray it real good. Spray the back of the Fibo pad. If you need to go over it a couple of times, it's quite all right. You can spray this several times. It's not going to affect the sealant property. So as many times as it takes to get it nice and clean and full. Then we'll do the same thing where the base profile sets on the shower pan. And since we did the dog leg on this one, we'll also put some Fibo Seal. All right, just like we did at the bottom, we'll go ahead and clean the corner, make sure all the debris is gone so that the Fibo Seal sticks. We've got nice clean sealant going into the joint. And we're going to apply this in the corner the same way we did at the bottom. And you want to get the joint nice and full. You can apply the joint all the way, or you can go do it as you go. Either way is fine, as long as the joint gets full completely. I'm going to go ahead and stop at 2 tiles and show you the cleanup process and the tooling of the joint next. For this corner, we're going to use a different tool, and that's this Fibo sealing tool that looks like a home plate. This one here's got a number 5 on it, and this is the one that we use typically for the smallest corner joint possible. We do have other sizes. We've got a round one, and you can have a little bit wider one if for some reason your panel's a little further off the wall and you need to put more Fibo Seal in there. But typically the number 5 is the one that we want to use. So again, we're going to take our Fibo Clean and we're going to spray the whole length of the Fibo Seal joint, as well as we want to get either side of the panel so that we can lubricate the panel so that the sealant doesn't stick to the walls as we're...
Remember, the Fibo Clean evaporates quickly, so only spray as far as you're going to tool and respray every time you go to touch the sealant. You can repeat the spray, tool, and apply as many times as necessary for a full joint and to achieve a clean, professional finish.
Okay, so now we've got the bottom sealed, we've got the corner sealed. We're going to follow the same process all the way around the installation. Same thing goes with the L profiles, finish sealing, what have you. It's all a repetition of the same process.
You may also want to use blue tape here to hold the L profiles in place while the sealant is drying. This concludes the video demonstration of the basic steps involved in a Fibo alcove installation. While it does not encompass every situation you may encounter, it is a great place to start. We will be adding new segments and covering other details soon, and these will be offered in both recorded sessions and live webinar sessions as well. Our goal here is to give you the basic information needed to successfully install Fibo and pass the certification exam. You can always reach out to me individually with any questions you have, and be sure to keep a copy of the Fibo product installation guide handy and refer to that as well, because the instructions there are quite detailed. Let's review what we have covered and discuss some additional details. Any accessory that will bear weight, such as ADA grab bars, wall-mounted seats, toilets, cabinets, shower doors, etc., will require blocking in the framing. This blocking needs to be sufficient to bear the intended load the product is designed for. Always refer to the manufacturer's instructions for these specifications. Typical backwall options are OSB strips over studs for screw-in or drywall for glue-up. This is needed to be able to bring the Fibo in front of the flange of your tub or base and allow the panels to sit above the deck. For the OSB strips, this will also give us a surface to screw into, as the end of a panel will likely not land on a stud. OSB strips are most desirable as they allow us the opportunity to use shims to overcome any framing issues such as bowing, a proud stud, corners out of plumb, etc. You can also use full sheet OSB backing as material if you wish. As mentioned, we can go over existing surfaces such as tile, and we have a separate set of instructions for this, which we can provide to you upon request. Remember to set the bottom of your OSB or drywall or whatever substrate it is that you're going to use 1/4 inch above the flange or deck. There is only one place to apply the Fibo seal in the Aqualock click joint, and that is on the tongue or short side of the Aqualock, and fill the tongue completely, orienting the panel face up. Fibo seal does not go behind the panel. There is also only one place to place a screw in the Aqualock, and that is in the milled vertical line on the long side of the Aqualock, the groove side, or the nailing lip. Do not overdrive these screws to the point where you blow out the back of the Aqualock itself. Snug to the surface is adequate, and the Aqualock compensates for the screw head in its design. Always clean excess Fibo seal right away as you go through the installation. It is much easier and a lot less messy than waiting till the end. Fibo wipes can leave a residue on the panels when it dries, particularly with matte finishes, so you want to clean that as well before moving on to the next panel. And that could be done by spraying Fibo Clean into a paper towel and removing that haze. There is no substitute for Fibo Seal for sealing the cut surfaces and for your finish sealing or caulking. This is important in order to maintain warranty. If you're attaching anything to the Fibo panels, such as screw-on accessories, glass stores, etc., you can use silicone or whatever sealant is recommended by that respective manufacturer. Here I want to show you a top view of the inside corner installation. Each panel must be cut flat on the end where it goes into the corner. Fibo Seal must also be applied to that cut surface of the panel and not to the profile to ensure a waterproof installation. We did not show this in our video demonstration, but I want you to see how to install an outside corner profile for a 90-degree return. For the last panel before the 90-degree return, you want to add 1 centimeter, or roughly 5/16 of an inch, to the length of that panel, as this profile has a channel that will slide over the end of the panel and help hold that panel to the wall at the end of the run. In this instance, you will add Fibo Seal into the channel before installing to the end of the panel and on the return side as well. On the return side, you'll use the nailing flange to screw this profile into the adjacent return wall. This will keep the panel in place on the wall and also hold the profile in place while you install the next panel. The Fibo screws will tap themselves, but it is best practice to pre-drill and countersink your screws. You will then continue your installation around the remainder of the room. 1 screw per OSB strip, or 5 screws evenly spaced along the length of this profile, is sufficient for fastening this profile to the wall. Pipe penetrations and surface mount accessories. For valves, shower heads, etc., a standard hole saw bit will work just fine. You can use a jigsaw, a router, or whatever cutting tool you're comfortable using, but remember to be mindful that you don't chip the laminate. For any surface mount accessory, mark and pre-drill your holes, but do not drive the hole all the way through the panel. A 3/16 of an inch penetration is fine. Fill the holes with Fibo Seal, and using the manufacturer's hardware, install your accessory, and the threads of the screw will carry the Fibo Seal through the hole. Remember that if you are installing anything that will bear weight, such as an ADA grab bar, a hinged shower door, or anything of that nature, that adequate blocking must be in place in the framing. Just as we did attaching the niche to the wall, we also want to use Fibo Seal not only to seal the holes we cut, but also on the wall where your escutcheon or shower trim will sit on the wall. This is not to replace the manufacturer's hardware, but in addition to, in order to provide a watertight attachment. When installing this trim, you should have excess Fibo Seal squeeze out from around the trim, and the cleanup process will be the same. This will ensure a watertight seal at your plumbing location and any other accessory that you may have added to the wall. You can install Fibo in an alcove that has a window. This illustration, that can be found in our product installation guide, shows a cutaway view of how this is to be done. We have a separate tutorial for this, and that can be provided upon request. Regular cleaning will keep your Fibo installation looking new for many years. We do not require any special cleaners for our panels. Standard cleaners such as 409 or similar will work just fine. It's also important to clean the sealant in the corners and base regularly to remove any residue from use. We do not recommend using bleach, as this can break down the sealant prematurely. Full care and maintenance instructions can be found on our website. There's virtually no maintenance required other than regular cleaning. The grout line in our tile designs is a second layer of laminate that is routed into the panel during the manufacturing process. Therefore, there's no sealing of the grout, or regrouting ever necessary to be done. The finished sealant or caulking in the corners and at the base will need to be redone at some point. With proper care, exposed Fibo sealant can last as long as 10 years. Cleaning habits, the condition of the water, and the cleaning products used can all influence how long before this will need to be done. This is a very simple cutout and replace process using Fibo Clean, wipes, Fibo Seal, and the sealing tools, and is a much easier process than if it were a silicone or some other type of sealant. Fibo Seal will stick to itself, so 100% removal is not necessary. Simply remove the affected sealant and reapply. All of my contact information is listed here, and please feel free to reach out to me at any time should you need additional support. You're invited to send me pictures of completed jobs, as well as any particular situation you find yourself in that you need some help with. The phone number given is my cell phone, so you can send me pictures there, as well as text messages. I have also provided the links to our US website, YouTube channel, online brochures, and the PDF version of our installation guide. If you would like a PDF version or a download link of this session, please contact me by email and let me know. Thank you very much for your time today and your interest in becoming a Fibo certified installer. Now that the instruction is complete, please follow the instructions on this slide to request a link to the exam. Upon receiving a passing grade, we will send you a certificate by email. We will also be sending you a link to a brief survey to get your feedback on this training. We will also keep you informed with periodic emails to inform you of future events, new content, etc. I wish you all the best as you move forward with Fibo.